What's up, my comic comrades? Today we're breaking down the history of Kang the Conqueror because he's one of the prominent characters closely associated with the TVA, which of course stands for Time Variance Authority. Anyway, with that being the case, and considering that Marvel Studios has already revealed that Kang will be appearing in the MCU, we won't be surprised if he makes an appearance in the series. I mean, Marvel already cast Jonathan Majors in the role, but maybe they're holding him for the Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania movie. Regardless, Kang the Conqueror is still an awesome character who deserves a History Of episode. Also, a couple of weeks ago, we announced a brand new Comixology original comic series that I'm writing alongside Frank Barberry and artist Rory Coleman, titled Astonishing Times. You can of course watch our announcement video with full details right here, but we are getting closer and closer to the release of Astonishing Times issue 1, and we have some great behind the scenes and teaser content coming here on Variant very soon, so keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, you can pre-order Astonishing Times issue 1 on Comixology right now by clicking the link in the description of this video. But now let's take a look at the history of this time-traveling supervillain, Kang the Conqueror. Kang first appeared as Rama Tut in Fantastic Four issue 19 in October of 1963. He would make his first appearance as Kang in the Avengers issue 8 in September of 1964. And pretty much like every new Marvel character from the 60s and 70s, he was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Kang is most widely known as an Avengers and Fantastic Four villain, although he's crossed paths with almost every Marvel hero at one point or another. But other than that, he's just another dope and iconic villain that Jack Kirby and Stan Lee created. It's always mind-blowing to me the amount of iconic and fan-loved characters those two came up with together. Like, you're lucky to create one character or IP that's successful, let alone like legitimately over 50. Anyway, you know what time it is. Time to break down Kang's fictional origin. Before Kang was Kang the Conqueror, he was Nathaniel Richards, a scholar from around the 30th or 31st century, who is quite possibly a descendant of Reed Richards' time-traveling father, also named Nathaniel Richards. And get this, also possibly a descendant of Victor Von Doom. Nathaniel, being the scholar that he was fascinated with history and ended up mastering time travel technology, recreating Dr. Doom's time machine, at which point he was like, you know what? I'm gonna go back in time to ancient Egypt, traveling in a spaceship that looks like the Sphinx, and call myself Pharaoh Rama Tut. And he did all of this because he was planning on capturing En-Sabah Nur, the mutant who would eventually become Apocalypse, as his heir. But come on, Nathaniel Richards, now Rama Tut, isn't the only person who traveled through time, because the Fantastic Four just so happened to end up in this timeline as well, and of course then defeated Rama Tut. The Fantastic Four literally send Rama Tut on the run, with him leaving in a spaceship saying, "I shall leave my Sphinx behind, to mystify mankind for centuries to come. And when I leave, the memory of my rage will feed into oblivion, as though I had never been." Which all went down in Fantastic Four issue 19, his first appearance, which also explains how the Sphinx was created in the Marvel Universe. It's kind of funny how in real life we don't know how the Sphinx and pyramids were made, and this is Marvel's explanation. But this brings us to Fantastic Four Annual Issue 2, where Dr. Doom is hurtling through space towards Jupiter and was sucked up all UFO style by Rama. It's after this meeting that Rama thinks Dr. Doom to be his ancestor, so much so they both think they might be the same person, but if so, how could they coexist at the same moment in eternity? With the help of his possible future self, Dr. Doom, Nathaniel designs an armor that's based off of Doom's and then calls himself the Scarlet Centurion, who, you guessed it, wore red metal armor. From here, Rama, now Scarlet Centurion, found alternate reality counterparts of the Avengers and put them against our main 616 Avengers. But come on, if the Fantastic Four beat Rama, of course the entire Avengers beat him, kicking him out of their timeline. After his defeat at the hands of the Avengers, Nathaniel decided to ditch his Scarlet Centurion persona and return back to his Rama Tut guise. He wanted to return to his own timeline, but a time storm caused him to overshoot his own era and ended up in a war-torn 40th century. He also saw that this war-torn future consisted of barbarians who battled with technology that they didn't understand. So Rama saw this as a prime opportunity to reinvent his identity once again. This time, as we all know him, Kang the Conqueror. As such, he easily conquers this planet and then expands his domination throughout the galaxy. But this future world is dying, so inevitably he returns back to the 20th century to seek his revenge on Earth's mightiest heroes, which we first see in Avengers issue 8. But that, my comic comrades, is Kang's origin. Now let's take a look at some story arcs and publication history. One of the earliest significant stories that revolved around Kang was when he fell in love with Princess Ravonna Renslayer in his own timeline. The problem is she doesn't reciprocate the same feelings towards him. She quite literally was like, yeah, I'm not gonna marry you. That's not a thing. So what does any villain do to prove his love for the woman he loves? Demonstrate his power by kidnapping the Avengers. But even being able to kidnap and defeat the Avengers did not impress Ravonna. Inevitably, when Kang's army saw that he refused to execute Ravonna and her father for their disobedience and hate towards him, his commanders revolted, turning on him, so Kang frees the Avengers to fight with him against his own army. Of course, the combined power of Kang and the Avengers are able to defeat Kang's commanders, but unfortunately Ravonna is killed in the process when she jumped in front of a blast that was meant for Kang, which made him realize she really did love him, or at least had feelings for him after all. So Kang takes the Avengers back to the present and places Ravonna's body in stasis, almost all Mr. Freeze style. Sometime after this, Kang makes a wager with the cosmic entity, Grand Master. But it's not as simple as that. Kang, of course, is using the Avengers as pawns in a bet that if he wins, Grand Master will temporarily give him power over life and death. And you guessed it, the reason he's doing this is so he could bring his love, Ravonna, back to life. Now at this point, things don't go according to plan. There's a stalemate in the first round due to the Black Knight intervening, which prevents a solid victory for the Avengers. With that said, the Avengers do win the second round of this bet, but unfortunately because of the stalemate in the first round, Grand Master denies Kang the power of both life and death and is now forced to choose one of them, as he only clearly won one of the rounds. And Kang shockingly chooses the power of death over the Avengers. That's right, he'd rather kill the Avengers instead of bringing his love back to life. That's how much he hates them. But Kang is stopped by the Black Knight, who is not an Avenger at this time, so he's not affected by the power to kill the Avengers. After this, we would have the time in the Incredible Hulk issue 135, when Kang kidnapped the Hulk and then sends him back to 1917 France to kill Phantom Eagle before he can destroy a giant German mortar cannon. Because if they prevented the cannon's destruction, a French ancestor of Bruce Banner would be killed. Meaning if this ancestor of Banner's was killed, there would be no Hulk, and the Avengers would have never formed, as the only reason why they formed in the first place was because of the Hulk's rampage. And of course, that's what Kang wants most, for there to be no Avengers. But the Hulk accidentally ended up destroying the cannon himself, which sends him back to the present while Kang is shot into limbo. This brings us to the celestial Madonna. Kang appears at Avengers Mansion looking for Madonna, who turns out to be the Mantis. He wants to marry her because she's destined to have a powerful child. But guess what? Time travel is always crazy, and this proves true yet again, as our heroes are aided by a future version of Kang who is tired of conquest and had returned to ancient Egypt and his identity of Rama-Tut. It's during this story that Swordsman was killed. Long story short, while trying to gather the strength to defeat Thor, Kang overloads, destroying himself and apparently erasing all other versions of him from existence. Apparently. We've gotten several awesome Kang story arcs like the Council of Kangs, where we got several different Kangs from the multiverse, including the Prime Kang, who says he shall conquer all times. Kang was also in the Infinity War storyline, where he teamed up with Dr. Doom in order to steal a collection of cosmic cubes from Adam Warlock's evil side, Magus. And they nearly succeeded in their mission, but Doom ended up turning on Kang. Then you have the Marvel now, where Kang kidnaps the Apocalypse twins, the children of Archangel and Pestilence, as part of an elaborate scheme. Because he always has an elaborate scheme, it's just kind of what he does. But a little more recently, Kang the Conqueror has been a reoccurring character in the Pottersville arc of the solo Doctor Doom series. In the series, we see that Kang is tethered to Doom in quantum entanglement, so he appears several times throughout the series, randomly conversing with the Laverian despot. But you guessed it, it was a ploy, all part of Kang's plan, because by helping Doom in saving the world, Kang is actually making the world a whole lot easier for himself to conquer in the future. And most recently, Kang appeared in the King in Black symbiote Spider-Man series, which we covered right here on the channel. You can find the link for that right here. But with all that covered, let's talk about some powers and abilities. Now, this may be a shock to some of you, but Kang doesn't have any superhuman abilities. But he is a genius, being one of the smartest minds in all of Marvel, and an expert historical scholar and master physicist who specializes in time travel. And he just so happens to be a master technician and engineer. Now, though he as a person doesn't have any powers, his advanced armor and technology grant him a lot of powers. Think of him as like a future time-traveling Iron Man. You see, he's armed with 40th century technology and wears highly advanced battle armor that increases his strength a bunch. But of course, his armor doesn't just increase his strength. It also allows him to shoot energy blasts, create holograms, and force field projections. His armor is even capable of controlling other forms of technology, which is extremely useful considering he likes to time travel. And it has a 30-day supply of food and air. And with his time ship, he has access to technology from any and all centuries. He's also a lot more resistant to radiation than humans from the 21st century. So again, while Kang himself as a person has no superhuman abilities like flight, energy projection, and all that cool stuff, his suit and technology give him all that plus more. And clearly, Kang possesses the power of time travel, which I think goes without saying, as we've been talking about that all throughout the episode. But now let's take a look at some reading recommendations. As you've seen throughout this episode, there are many stories featuring Kang, but you definitely want to check out Avengers Kang Time and Time Again, Fantastic Four issue 19, Avengers issue 8, and Doctor Doom Volume 1 Pottersville. That should be enough to get you all started.
First up for the week of the 15th, we have Nightwing issue 81. Dick Grayson trades out his Eskrima sticks for a magnifying glass and a sleuth hat to investigate Bloodhaven's new mayor, Melinda Zuko, and find out how the daughter of the man who murdered Dick Grayson's parents came to power in Nightwing City. Here we have Star Wars issue 14. The rebels finally have a lead on the location of Han Solo. It's time to save the captain of the Millennium Falcon from his frozen carbonate tomb. Next up, we have Static Season 1, Issue 1. The long-awaited return of the Milestone universe has come, and this brings us a brand new Static solo series, which I couldn't be more excited for. Can't wait to see where this series takes Virgil. And finally, we have Venom Issue 200, the final chapter in the Book of Venom by Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman. This issue promises that nothing will ever be the same for Venom ever again. And that's gonna bring today's episode of Variant to a close, but if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to check out this one right here. And if you like all of our content, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the channel out. But I'll see you guys next time when I talk about all things comics.